So we're talking about choosing empowerment this year. And it's our first Sunday of the new year. And it's the perfect time for us to set the stage for how we're going to live our life this year. I want to remind everybody, including myself, that living an empowered life is a choice. It's not possible to ever say, I'm not empowered, unless you're choosing to believe that. And being empowered requires mindfulness, being present in the moment, being aware of what we're experiencing, and then applying that consistency in our efforts to be mindful and to stay mindful. I want to begin today with a harrowing story that I'm sure many of you heard this past week, but it was all about empowerment from my perspective. So as you may know, there were 2 planes that collided in Japan this past week, a Coast Guard plane and a Japan airline plane. The Japan airline flight had 367 people on it. When the flight landed, it skid 2/3 of a mile before the fire started. Imagine you're on a plane that is literally on fire, and most of us would probably be experiencing tremendous fear, and I'm sure those people were as well. But what happened in that next 18 minutes was incredible. There was no power on the plane. So imagine trying to communicate through bullhorns at a time like this. Every passenger had to be so quiet to hear directions. There were children crying, but even with that, there was no pushing, no shoving. No one grabbed their carry-on. Everyone grabbed a phone because most of those were accessible, and many were trying to capture this moment in their life. But from beginning of the landing until the last passenger got off that plane was only 18 minutes, and 367 people and the crew were saved. Because everyone stayed collectively empowered. In that moment, people chose life. They chose to survive. They chose to listen. They chose being together and getting each other off that plane. And even in their greatest fear and panic, only 15 people were injured and none were critically injured on that plane. Now, when you think about this, I want you to just think about how important it would be. I don't know that I would have been that calm. One, I would have had to have somebody push me on that thing that the slide. I would have had to close my eyes and have somebody push me. But to me, what was amazing was that every single interview I read or listened to afterwards, and these interviews were within minutes of people getting off that plane, every person talked positively about the collective calm they experienced and the orderly manner in which the plane was evacuated. Now, I want you to be really honest with yourself. What would you have been saying when you were interviewed? Because this might have been me. Oh my God, the plane was on fire! I was afraid to go down the slide. Seriously, I'm being honest. I don't know that my first words would have been, it was amazing how calm everybody was. And yet that's what came out everyone's mouth. And this is why I wanted to tell the story, because only minutes after people made a conscious choice to recall this experience in the most empowering way they could. And we all have the same choice all day long. And while, yes, it's more difficult to be empowered when our experiences don't end well, the point is we have a choice. And we have to make that choice within seconds, minutes of whatever happens to us. Or else those memories stay with us, they impact us mentally, emotionally, and physically. If we don't control the reflections, we will never live a healthy and happy life. It's a choice, and the sooner we make it, the better. So my question for us today is, how can we turn every experience into an opportunity to be spiritually empowered? Myrtle Fillmore wrote in her book, Healing Letters, to be truly healed and quickened by the life more abundant, one must forget the past and the limitations of the past and offer every thought, every ounce of energy to spirit to be used in bringing God's kingdom of light and love and order and beauty and health into the earth and into the lives of people. Now, I want to break it down for you. These are the three things she's asking us to do. Forget the past and any limitations associated with the past. Focus our thoughts and energy on God and spirit. And bring that spirit of light and love to the rest of the world. Three things. They don't sound very hard. And yet, will we make that choice to do that every single day? She was a pretty wise woman, as you know, many of you know. She healed her own life through those very steps of spiritual empowerment. And she learned to edit what she told herself every day about her condition, her mental, emotional, and physical condition. Every single day she edited. And that kind of empowerment comes from us developing this present moment consciousness, where wherever my feet are, I am. I'm not thinking about something else. I'm listening to who's in front of me. I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. And in that moment, in those moments of awareness, I can choose how I want to reflect on what is happening right before me. And that reflection, if I choose present moment awareness, will always bring me peace and contentment, because I'll stay in the moment, not future trip, and not look back. This type of mindful approach is what strengthens us spiritually. And many of us refer to that as the Christ consciousness. That's what Unity refers to when they're talking about that Christ consciousness. It's that ever-knowing presence that I'm bigger than what's outside here. There's more to me than what's in the mirror. Learning to apply mindfulness and edit our experiences is going to help us choose a path of empowerment. Now, one of my first lessons in understanding editing came from a television series. Yes, I said that. But there was an episode, I told this story in 2021. That's where I found it, actually, in my old notes. But there was an episode of Everybody Loves Raymond, in which I'm not the only one who likes reruns, right? Well, I never saw the show when it was on, so it's really been enlightening to me because there are many life lessons. And in this episode, Raymond's brother Robert is getting married. And he and his bride are standing up at the altar, and when the minister says, if there's anyone who knows reason why these two should not be married, speak now or hold your peace. And the mother of Raymond and Robert stands up, and she decides to speak her piece. And she begins by talking about how Robert might be making the decision to get married for all the wrong reasons, and she's concerned about this. So as you can imagine, people are stunned. And the mother goes on so long that the minister sits on the steps and just waits for her to finish. And the wedding eventually continues. They get married, and then the reception begins. And the first things that happen in the reception are the fathers fighting, and then the mothers arguing. And then here comes the bride and groom when, the DJ says, and let's welcome. And here they come, sad face, mopey, into their reception. So Raymond recognizes this is a disaster of a reception, and he's got to do something. So he makes the choice to get up and give his toast right then and there at the beginning. And what he said after was so important from a lesson perspective. He said he knew this was on everybody's mind, the way their mother had behaved. He said that their mother had acted this way their entire life, speaking her mind no matter how inappropriate it seems, interfering in their personal lives, and embarrassing them in so many ways. But then he shared how he and his brother Robert had learned to edit their experiences with their mother, choosing to remember the good in every situation. He said they could either remember how she loved them enough to speak up and protect them in her own version, or they could remember the painful aspects of every single experience with her. And these experiences with her come out throughout the entire series. But the idea being that they learned at an early age to edit. And editing allowed them to have memories of their mom that brought them joy and humor and allowed them to stay in the relationship with her. Now, it may seem like a silly story to tell. I'm a minister standing up here telling this ridiculous story. But we have all had a Marie in our stories. We have all had these moments when someone said things that rocked us. But not all of us have chosen in those moments to edit, to decide what should be taken forward and what should be left behind forever. We make choices about whether we're going to retain the beautiful parts of these experiences we have or the negative parts. Do we run out and tell the first person how bad that experience was, or do we remember like the people on the plane? What was the good part in that story? A more recent experience for me was this past week when someone, Sharon Hall, actually recommended that Jeffrey and I watch the movie Greater. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but if you haven't, I highly recommend it. I will not ruin it for you by telling you details, but I am going to tell you that my favorite lesson in that movie, and of course, no coincidence, I never heard of the movie, saw it this week, and here I am giving you a lesson I learned that matches what we're talking about today. No coincidence where our lessons come from. And my favorite part of that story was that someone says that in every experiences that we have, every experience we have, the details around that experience will fade. But what we do with that experience will define us. So in the first 5 minutes after anything that happens, it's what we do, what we think, what we believe, and what we take forward that will define us. The rest of the details will be forgotten. As co-creators on this journey, we need to pay attention to knowing that we're free to choose whether we are the victim or the victor in every experience. And are we leading with faith or we're leading with fear? Luis shared a beautiful post with me over the holiday, and I want to show it to you. Here's what it says. This year, why not start the year with an empty jar and fill it with notes about the good things that happen. And then on New Year's Eve, at the end of this year, empty the jar and see what awesome stuff happened this year. Wouldn't that be a great exercise for all of us? I want to encourage all of us to get an empty jar this week and let's start filling it. And let's hope that we need bigger jars as the year goes on because we're only including the positive. I once read that every challenge can be met and handled with effortless ease when we are directly connected to the light of our higher self. And when we choose to build a good relationship with our heart and align ourselves with our power, we see all things from a higher perspective. Let's look at today's lessons. Choosing empowerment requires the following from us. First, to be mindful of everything we think, say, and do, and to identify self-sabotaging and fear-filled references. Number 2, to edit the story in the first 5 minutes and become a victor versus a victim. To rethink and restate and rewrite the narrative we take forward. Number 3, to release any emotion we have attached to it and store only what brings us peace and comfort. Let go of the angst. And number 4, surrender to the divine process of life. Faith over fear is the path to freedom. The affirmation I have for us today is, I am empowered through spirit. Let's say that together. I am empowered through spirit. And the quote I have is from Iyanla Vanzant. I love the quote. When you stand and share your story in an empowering way, your story will heal you and your story will heal someone else. Let's take that in. So we pause now to reflect upon the power of choice, knowing that every day we can be empowered by making the choice to carry only the good forward, to leave the negative in the past, to look for the good in our life, to edit our experiences for the positive, the humor, and the joy we can find, and to let go of all the rest. And so we are grateful for that spirit of empowerment. Amen.